Well, hi there, I'm Caleb Jones, and this is Alpha Male 2.0, freedom-focused lifestyle design for men. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. We do 5 videos a week here on how to make both your business life and your woman life more free, because you need both. Let me talk about being average versus being above average. So I do not teach get rich. I do not teach 10X. I do not teach be a millionaire. I do not teach make a 6-figure income other than one of my courses. There's one course on consulting that talks about that. Other than that, I don't teach that. I don't teach how to be super successful. I am not Grant Cardone. I am not Dan Pena. I like those guys, but that's not what I teach here. I teach Alpha Male 2.0, which is a very specific model. It's $75,000 a year or more, not $600,000 a year, but $75,000 a year, location independent income, while you are dating or at least having sex with at least 2 women, not 1 and not 0, 2 women who you find at least cute. Even better if you can make them hot, but at least cute. That's what I teach. That is within the realm of any man, just about any man watching this video. Not a big deal. It's not. But is it above average? If you're making $75,000 a year, are you making the average income? No, you're making the above average income. If you're having sex with 2 attractive women, are you average? No, you're above average, right? Which is fine. So I am teaching a model that is above average. Now, why am I doing this? Why am I teaching a model that is above average? I get guys who ask me, what's wrong with being average? What's wrong with just being an average guy? I mean, I agree, Caleb, that we shouldn't be losers, but why not just be an average guy? What's wrong with that? I get guys who ask that question. Let's talk about why. I will show you exactly why you shouldn't be average. There's a very specific logistical reason that is not part of any philosophy or opinion. Let's compare the typical average middle-class guy, middle-class American, from the 1950s, the early to mid-1950s, to the average middle-class American today. Let's compare these 2 gentlemen. So the average middle class guy in the 1950s, American, had his own house. He had his own car. He had a job. Not only have a job, he had a good job, a good, decent paying job. He had a wife who never divorced him. The divorce rate in the 50s was around 7-8%. So he had a very loyal wife. He had 1, 2, 3 kids. He could support, the wife often had her own car. Okay. He was able to go on vacations. His one job income was able to support that entire lifestyle. His wife, who was a stay-at-home wife, and his kids, and his house, and cars, and vacations. His one job, because the dollar was strong, because regulations were low, because taxes were low, because most things were low, it was great back then, he was able to support himself on that one income. Does that sound like the average middle-class guy today? No, the average middle-class guy today not only cannot afford a family, he can't even afford to pay for his own lifestyle expenses. Most middle-class average income guys today in the Western world have to live with fucking roommates because they can't afford their own place. They live with their fucking parents. You've got guys in their 30s who live with their parents. Guys in their late 20s who still live with roommates because they can't afford to pay their own fucking rent. So the guy of yesteryear was able to support a family, an entire family on his income. The guy today making an average income can't even support himself. He can support 0 people. My dad, back in the 1970s, this is back when you were able to do this. My dad was a low-income employee. I don't remember his income back then, but it was low. As I've talked about, we were not rich. We were very poor. We weren't very poor, but we were very financially strapped. But his income, his one low income working for the state of Oregon as a mental health counselor, supported himself and a family of 7. Now, barely, but it did. A low-income guy was able to have a stay-at-home wife and 5 kids. A low-income guy. He made lower than the average. Is that true now? No. So we are in a condition now where average sucks. Average for the first time in the Western world, in the collapsing Western civilization that we find ourselves a part of. Average is now a negative condition. Even if you want to talk about woman stuff, okay, fine. The guy in the 1950s had a loyal wife who did whatever he wanted, made him dinner, rubbed his feet. I'm exaggerating. I realize it wasn't all like that. There are exceptions. But the wife never divorced him, virtually never. Divorce was very rare in the 1950s, even the 60s, even the 70s. In the 80s, it started going up. He had that. Is that the average guy today? No, the average guy today can't even get laid, right? Or if he gets laid, it's a girlfriend who runs his life, and then she breaks up with him and he cries. So even in terms of woman life, there is a more happy condition for most average guys. This is why Being average today sucks. Being average in the 50s was a good deal. It was. I agree. Being average years ago was actually a pretty good deal. If you and I were having this conversation back in the 50s, this would be a very different conversation. I'm not actually sure the specific aspects of what that conversation would be. I still wouldn't like monogamy, but this would be a much more different concept. And Alpha Male 2.0, frankly, would be a much harder sell if this were the 1950s, when the typical guy was living a pretty damn good life. Is the typical guy living a damn good life today? No. You can't be average if you want to be long-term happy. And that's the model we're talking about here. Alpha Male 2.0 is about long-term, consistent, masculine happiness. This is not possible in today's Western world if you are average. If you make the average income, and if your woman life looks like the typical average guy, you're going to be screwed. Even the typical average guy who gets married gets divorced and loses half his money and loses his children. That's average. That's typical. What's wrong with being average? That's what's wrong with being average. You don't want to be average anymore. You don't need to be a billionaire. You don't need to be a millionaire. You don't need to make six figures. Because sometimes guys will say, well, you're trying to teach get rich. No, I'm not. Never have. Probably never will. I'm talking about making $75,000 a year, not making $1 million a year. You can do that. I'm talking about dating 2 women who are at least cute to you. You can do that. I'm not talking about banging 19-year-old supermodels. I'm not talking about that. If you want to do that, please do that. But you don't have to. I'm talking about something above average but achievable by just about any man watching this video. Alpha Male 2.0. If you want a lifestyle like this, go to joinsmic.com. We talk about that in great detail. You can work with me personally. A lot of audio training there. But this is not something that is difficult to do. But you don't want to be average. You will not be happy if you convince yourself that being average in the modern era today is okay. It's not.